Saturday, January 27th, marked the opening of a special exhibit at the Manchester Community Library. But it doesn't consist of pictures or paintings hung on the walls of the Hunter Room. Rather, the viewer gets to look at a series of posters, but ones that contain audio files that explain the exhibit. Paige Vignola of the Manchester Community Library explained how it worked.
So if you come into the library, you can scan the individual QR codes, and they will bring up various different oral histories. So the individuals here are going to be telling their own stories. I would recommend perhaps using earbuds or headphones because, as you can imagine, a lot of the narratives are of a highly delicate nature, and you may want to just be aware of who's around you when you're listening. But it is oral history that needs to be heard.
The audio files contain the recorded voices of people who, as children, were sent to the St. Joseph's Orphanage in Burlington. It was an orphanage run by the Catholic Diocese of Vermont for about 100 years, from the 1850s to the early 1970s. During that time, countless numbers of children were subjected to emotional and physical abuse by the people who were supposedly looking out for their welfare. The orphanage closed in 1974, but it wasn't until much later that the words and voices of the children who had been sent there began to be heard, and finally believed. The Vermont Folklife Center organized the exhibit, titled The Voices of St. Joseph's Orphanage, and it will be on exhibit until March 15th. In it, the voices of the former children and the shocking tales of abuse that they suffered from are heard. Brenda Hannon is one of the survivors, and she was on hand to help open the exhibit, which has been traveling around Vermont.
Back then, you were dropped off at the orphanage. I had a state of Vermont social worker brought me there and dropped me off. And they never did come back and check on you. There was no oversight of what the orphanage did. They assumed that it was a Catholic facility and that they would take care of the children and give them a good and safe home and upbringing. So no, they did not ever come and check and see how we were doing. Sometimes some of the children would run away and they would try and tell the police officers what went on, and they would be brought back, and the nuns would just say, only in the minds of a child. The emotional abuse and damage that occurred as a child will stay with you for the rest of your life. You have to fight through it every day. I still find unknown triggers that will set me off on crying jags or different things, or how I react to different situations. It's not normal, or sometimes I feel it's not normal, and it's a result of. I mean, if you're going to reprimand me for some reason, you will most likely find me crying and curled up in a ball in a corner, because I really do think that you are going to beat me because I wasn't perfect.
Mark Wenberg is the former facilitator of the St. Joseph's Restorative Inquiry, an initiative of the Burlington County Community Justice Center, which documented the events of the orphanage.
So the background is that I facilitated a restorative inquiry process working with a group of survivors or former children from the orphanage. And early on in the process, they made it clear that they wanted their story to be known and to be heard. And so as part of that inquiry process, we look for a number of different ways to support that request. And one of the ways we did that is through this exhibition, which is a partnership between the Voices of St. Joseph's Orphanage Group, the Vermont Folklife Center, and the Restorative Inquiry. So beginning in 2021, the Folklife Center started recording the oral histories of the participants of the inquiry. And recorded, I think, a total of 16 oral histories, excerpts of which are embedded in this exhibit. So everyone who recorded an oral history has an excerpt from their oral history, which is on one of these panels in the exhibition. And it's them talking through their own experience and their own perspective of what it was like to be at the orphanage, the impacts from that experience, how they found their way through, their resiliency, and finally their participation in the restorative inquiry itself. So this exhibition also helps to lay out the broad history of the orphanage itself. And that was written largely by Sam Hemingway, a former reporter for the Burlington Free Press, who was very connected to the story early on in the 1990s, and a group of collaborators who came together to help make this exhibition come to life.
There were also legal and legislative inquiries along the way, which former Lieutenant Governor Molly Gray was involved with.
I served as an assistant attorney general. I helped run statewide investigation into the Roman Catholic Diocese, Burlington, and also the operators of the orphanage. And what we know is that more than 13,000 Vermont children went through the orphanage. It was a licensed state facility, that there were myriad allegations of child abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, even homicide. And what broke my heart as a prosecutor at the time, an investigator, was that both the statute of limitations had run on many of these crimes, allegations, but also in some cases we didn't have enough evidence to prosecute. And we want a justice system that works, but there's also other forms of justice, and this initiative is a huge part of that. It's a restorative justice initiative. The restorative justice initiative that took place, called a restorative inquiry, was really about letting those who had been impacted, the former children, the former residents, Vermonters who had gone through the orphanage, allowing them to tell their stories, to guide justice in the form that it would take that would be best for them. That includes today this Folk Life Center curated exhibit that tells the stories and brings to light what occurred. It's a memorial garden that will be tangible, that will exist in Burlington on the site of the former orphanage. I'm helping to raise funds for that, and I hope Vermonters will contribute. We have about $60,000 left to raise to make this exhibit possible, but also a lot of advocacy in the legislature to change the statute of limitations and to do everything we can to make sure this doesn't happen again in our communities and in our state. And I think this will be a model for the nation too, because this didn't just happen in Vermont, it happened all over the US and all over the world.
State Senator Dick Sears was also part of the eventual reckoning.
I've been in the legislature a long time. Some people say too long, some people say stick around. But the point I would like to make is that over the years, there are certain events that occur in the legislative process that stay with me, and those are the ones I kind of judge as perhaps the most important. In 2021, we were in the midst of a COVID outbreak, and we were meeting remotely, and Chris Pearson, who was a state senator from Chittenden County, kept bugging me to hear from Mark and other survivors of St. Joseph's. And I would be hard-pressed not to say that that was some of the most powerful testimony I've ever heard. And today I got to meet Brenda in person rather than in a little Zoom box, which was really exciting, and I will not forget that. But you know, I'll never forget some of the testimony from the survivors of St. Joseph's. And to think that that went on in our state, which we take great pride in, for so long and for so many years, left an indelible mark on me. Our bill was S-99, Act 26 of 2021. And it eliminated the statute of limitations in civil cases for child physical assault. We had done the similar thing for child sexual assault a few years before. But while we were looking at this, and I know it probably won't help, I don't know who you would sue, but it certainly helps to have the knowledge that the legislature, the governor, through his signature, behind you in your effort. And I was proud to be able to play a role in the Senate Pro committee in funding the $25,000 first time. And then honestly, we also found out about Current Happen School. And we're still working with those groups as well. So it's not just St. Joseph's, unfortunately, it's been other places in the state. So we should always remain vigilant, but victims should come first. And I want to thank all of you for all of your efforts, and particularly on the restorative justice side, trying to make the victims whole as much as we can. Thank you.
The story is a sad one, but also powerful, even if accountability was long delayed. And in its place, once the fundraising is completed, there will be a permanent memorial pathway and a healing garden in the area below the former orphanage.
Yes, so we created a development committee to raise funds for a memorial that will be on the grounds and around the grounds of the former orphanage. And I'm sure Brenda has talked about this as well, that it will honor the stories from the past as well as the hopes for the future for children in Vermont. And it's meant to be both a place of respite and also a place where we can contemplate what children deserve in this world and what we want to be able to create for them, and motivate us both to restoring ourselves and to taking action.
For the GNAT-TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.